Alexander Cockburn is co-editor of Counterpunch, one of the hardest-hitting liberal websites on the internet. It's one of the websites that I go to every single morning, especially their fantastic articles on foreign policy and civil liberties. Alexander is one of the country's best-known radical journalists with a regular column for The Nation called Beat the Devil. He was born in Scotland. He graduated from Oxford with a degree in English literature and language. His articles have appeared in the Village Voice, the New York Review of Books, Harper's Magazine, Atlantic Monthly, and the Wall Street Journal, where he had a regular column from 1980 to 1990. He has authored and edited several books, including Corruption of Empire, Whiteout, the CIA, Drugs and the Press, and Imperial Crusades. The title of Alexander's talk is Imperial Crusades, the Corruption of U.S. Foreign Policy. Alexander Cockburn. They'll give you a 15-minute warning.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, part of the Libertarian Outreach Program. This is not my first go-around as a kind of lefty token. Justin had me to a conference in San Mateo. I don't know, must have been almost a decade ago. I got a lot of stick from the left for consorting openly with Pat Buchanan. It so happened Buchanan had spoken the day before I spoke, but I guess the sort of sulfuric presence of Mr. Buchanan contaminated the purity of my left-wing vestments. So what could I bring to this gathering? It might be useful to you folks. I've, of course, been here for a couple of days, enjoyed the speeches, and what do I represent? In my days on the Journal, I was invited by the late Robert Bartley and Peter Kahn to be the left mad dog in 1980, 80 through 90. I think the idea was that if I ran on the op-ed every 3 weeks, they could say we represent all points of view. They were a bit more open to stuff than they are now. The current Wall Street Journal, I said when Rupert Murdoch took it over, it was the only paper he'd ever taken over where he was slightly to the left of the editorial position. I think it's impossible to be more insane than Paul Gigot. You're going to come up with someone, I know, but it's tough. Counterpunch is, it's kind of about interestingly enough, about the same size as antiwar.com. We have about 100,000, 80 to 100,000 unique viewers a day. As a guy who started his career of left-wing extremism handing leaflets to USAF truck drivers outside a nuclear base in Oxfordshire in the 50s, where you'd hand up your leaflet, the guy would look at it and throw it back in your face or throw it over the edge of the truck, and you'd thank it a good day if you'd got rid of 50 or 100 leaflets by the end of the day without being run over. Now, at the end of the month, the internet being what it is, you can look and see where your audience figures were, and you can find that you were read on by 30,000 people on US military bases. No truck driver throwing it down, they're sitting there looking at your website. So yeah, there has been a revolution, and I think people like anti-war, the libertarians, and Counterpunch, if we pass as some sort of representative of the left, have profited immeasurably thereby. And of course, one of the reasons I think we do well, as opposed to the incredibly boring Nation magazine, very swift path to sleep, in my opinion, although I've written for it for 25 years, is that we do entertain other points of view. People always make a point of saying we are open to all points of view. The more they say it, the less true it is. Most people are absolutely immune to other points of view than their own. Absolutely, totally immune. The left as much, if not more than any. The left idea of a meeting is to form a circle, point the guns inward, and then fire. I was a bit amused to hear Justin take a swipe at deviationism of the left, and I have to say, then spent 25 minutes trashing your bitter opponents in the libertarian movement. I thought, boy, he's becoming a lefty. Tell you, Lenin, probably not your favorite guy. Lenin, very compulsive fellow. When he was living in Zurich, his wife, Krupskaya, said, Vladimir, you're just working all the time. You're working like a dog, and you really need to take the day off. And Lenin said, I don't know, I've got this to do. I've got to write what is to be done. I've got to write a couple of manifestos, and so on. She said, oh, forget it. Let's go up in the mountains. So they went up a little mountain, and they had the picnic box, and they spread out the picnic box. And she noticed, even as she was spreading out the delicacies, that he was looking moodily into the middle distance, wasn't enjoying himself. And finally he turned around and he said, God damn those Mensheviks. That was Lenin. He could never get it off his mind. Of course, the Mensheviks, if you're interested in this thing, ultimately their descendants, when they came to America, became the neocons. So he was right to be worried. But he should have enjoyed the picnic. It should be inscribed on every movement, enjoy the picnic. So, we at Counterpunch, fairly early on, noticed that, to our somewhat dismay, that the libertarian writers are pretty popular. We have Paul Craig Roberts, who's a libertarian bent, at the end of the month, you rack up which are the most visited articles, and it's kind of Craig Roberts, Craig Roberts, Craig Roberts, Craig Roberts. And then another guy called Mike Whitney. Mike Whitney lives up in the state of Washington and predicts the complete collapse of capitalism on a twice-weekly basis. I called him up, I said, Mike, I'm going to give you one a month. Only one a month for collapse of capitalism. If you go over 1 month, you're going to have one less the following month. He says, but it's happening, it's happening. I said, I know, it's been happening for a long time. Just take your time. And what we decided, that the points of common unity are pretty obvious. Anti-war, and pro-civil liberties and pro-freedom. People, oddly enough, react favorably when given good articles on this topic. And that is our measure. What we've also noticed, the other day, Seymour Hersh, noted journalist, called up my brother Andrew, who lives in Washington, angrily, and he said, why did you give that piece about the latest Bush? He had a great article about 3 weeks ago saying that Bush had signed a secret finding, it must be about 2 months ago now, expanding the secret war against Iran. This is funding groups inside Iran, campaign of assassination, the campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon, which met with disaster about a month ago. And Andrew got it completely right. And Seymour was wild because he'd obviously been writing the same article, and then the checker at the New Yorker had brought him the one in Counterpunch and said, they published it already, which usually doesn't stop Seymour from claiming a scoop. But what struck me, and I looked it up for Andrew, I said, you've had 1 million people read this article on our site, which is nice. I was glad to tell him that. But the larger truth for us is that the mainstream press is dying. You can just look. It's dying in front of our eyes. All my life I've been hoping for this day. Thinking hope against hope, I wish the New York Times would shrivel up and die. And like the little boy who, when the earthquake occurs right when she says, I hope the school's going to fall down,